Welcome to Facts on the Ground. I'm Jesse Zerwell, and my guest today is independent journalist and co-host of the Pro Democracy Pod, Alex Rubinstein. Alex, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate the early podcast shout out because we just started, so a lot of people are still getting used to saying that.
Absolutely. And I encourage anybody who's watching to check that out on Rockfin. It's really good content. And today we're going to talk about this piece you published at the end of last week, or the end of this week, I should say, with the Gray Zone. It's also on your Substack, realalexruby.substack.com. And it is titled Facebook Whistleblower, and whistleblower is in quotes. Frances Haugen, represented by U.S. intelligence insiders. So, as I'm sure a lot of people watching know, at the beginning of this month, Facebook's whistleblower, so to speak, Frances Haugen, seemingly came out of nowhere, first with the Wall Street Journal and then before Congress to testify, if you will, about Facebook's abuses. And immediately red flags started popping up, at least for me. And I think Alex would agree for him as well. So let's get into that, Alex. When this all started coming to the fore, what were your initial thoughts, and when did the red flags start popping up for you?
Yeah, so I mean, immediately, like I think a lot of people, and this is the perception I've been getting on social media and elsewhere, immediately people were very suspicious. What kind of a whistleblower advocates or tries to push a censorship agenda? That's not what we're used to seeing as like actual, whistleblowers, like a lot of the people I mentioned in my article, John Kiriakou, Thomas Drake, Jeffrey Sterling. None of them have really pushed censorship. So I think immediately a lot of people were very suspicious. And right away, I started looking into her. I found her old Twitter account, not the new one that was instantly verified, which in my article I contrast with Julian Assange, who never got verified. He used to have a blue diamond at the end of his name on Twitter, for those who don't remember, which is supposed to look like a verification badge because Twitter never actually gave him a real one. So I contrast that with Frances Haugen. But I found her old Twitter account, her personal one from years before. I found her old blog, and I found nothing interesting, right? It was just like really, really boring. I mean, tweets about taking Ambien before a flight to go to the Goog, meaning the Google headquarters. Tweets about flirting with men from Brown University, and how they appreciate math jokes, really, really boring stuff. And so I kind of like turned away from this story for a while because I'm like, there's nothing here. And then a few weeks later, it came to my attention that she was represented legally by a group called Whistleblower Aid. And the more that I dug into this group, the more I understood why I found her early stuff boring. I think that actually a boring person who is kind of being used for ulterior motives is much more preferable than somebody who has like a really interesting backstory or their own agenda. The only thing I really found of her that was related to politics before, blowing the whistle, was a like TED Talk type thing. A speech she gave at a conference about the intersection of gender and technology. So not exactly in line with the kind of political statements that she made during her congressional testimony about, Iran or China or Myanmar, etc.
So, can you break down those comments she made in her testimony a little bit about Myanmar, Iran, Ethiopia, which
Mhm.
was seemingly, well, not seemingly, it was out of nowhere? Because for me, that's when the biggest red flag went up. I was
Yeah,
skeptical from the beginning,
yeah.
just based on how neatly this was all rolled out, from Wall Street Journal to 60 Minutes to congressional testimony within a matter of days. But the comments about those states and others which are essentially undeclared enemies, or in the case of Iran, declared enemies of the US, I found those to be just
Well, if I'm not,
so glaringly telling.
yeah. Well, if I'm not mistaken, all of those countries that I listed before are under sanction by the United States government. I think that they are kind of all official enemies of the United States government. Um, and I'm not going to pretend that I'm an expert on Myanmar or Ethiopia. However, the U.S. government has put out a line that they are doing ethnic cleansing and using Facebook to that end. I don't know how. There's one quote in my article from, I think it was Dan Sullivan or somebody. Oh no, I'm sorry. It was the host of 60 Minutes, Scott Pelley, I think his name is, who says that Haugen exposed how they're using Facebook to do a genocide. I'm like, how do you use Facebook to do a genocide? I just
Yeah.
like don't understand that. It's just such a wild statement, right? So yeah, I mean, she didn't push back at all when she was talking to Dan Sullivan at the hearing in Congress, and he was saying that Iran was the world's largest state sponsor of terror. I apologize. I have dogs in the background here.
That's okay.
Can you hear them?
Yeah, a little bit,
They
but
don't like to hear that. They disagree about Iran being the world's largest state sponsor of terror. And then about China Communist Party being the top competitor of the United States in this century. She was sitting there and she was nodding her head in agreement, and didn't push back on that at all. And she claimed that China is using Facebook to surveil Uyghurs. She said that Iran was using Facebook to conduct espionage. That's like another thing. Like, again, like, how do you use Facebook to do espionage? It's all like Facebook's
yeah,
public, right?
that's the question I was asking myself
If
when
I
I read that.
if I did the same activities as Iran, am I doing espionage? You know, I don't get it, honestly. What information of value exists on Facebook for espionage purposes? And I'm not saying that there's none, but why is it not private? Who's so bad at keeping their secrets that they put up like on Facebook, like, oh yeah, we're gonna go plant some code in Iran's nuclear program and blow it up. I'm gonna
Yeah.
post this on my. It might as well go on like TikTok too, right?
Yeah.
So it's just the whole situation was absurd. And actually, my guest on my podcast made a really made a really good point this week. Michael Tracy, that this team that she was working on, which was civic integrity before they dissolved that, and then counter espionage. They were patting themselves on the back for how Facebook handled the 2020 election. Meanwhile, the New York Post story about Hunter Biden's laptop was censored. And really the only discernible difference is that Donald Trump wasn't elected again. So I do see her as a political actor. I see her as kind of a liberal activist. She's actually donated. She keeps saying I'm not political. but she donated a lot of money over the years to Democrats,
Mm-hmm.
which I didn't find, but I included in my article, but that's not original research. So full credit to the person who dug that up. But there was kind of like a balancing act that was played, that has been played, not just in her congressional testimony, but I also assume in her meetings with European officials, because she's met with officials from the UK and France and the European Parliament. But there's like kind of a balancing act, and it's very clever, of, on one hand, they're saying that Facebook needs to be reined in and there needs to be more content moderation in order to, as Ted Cruz said, protect, or keep harmful content away from the children.
Mm-hmm.
So there's the protecting the children angle, and then there's the national security angle. And both of them, the Democrats, Republicans, they can get behind the protecting the children, censoring Facebook for that reason. But I think that's kind of a Trojan horse for the national security stuff, right? And the political stuff, because she's going to testify before the January 6th committee as well. So we're being fed this kind of innocuous reason as to why Facebook needs to be reined in, because of the young girl's body image or what have you. When we know, I would assume all of your viewers know, that this is going to be used to censor information that's inconvenient to the empire, right? So, go ahead. Yeah.
I was just going to add to what you said before about the statements on 60 Minutes, and then also in the Wall Street Journal, she was hailed as a quote modern U.S. hero, unquote.
I think that was The Guardian.
Was that?
I think so. Did I give a bad hyperlink there? It's not.
You're right.
Important.
You're right. That was The Guardian. And in the interview with 60 Minutes, she said Facebook was, quote, tearing our societies apart and causing ethnic violence around the world, unquote. And then that's when Scott Pelley, the 60 Minutes correspondent, said, quote, ethnic violence, including Myanmar in 2018, when the military used Facebook to launch a genocide, unquote, which is what we were just talking about, which logistically and in a lot of other ways makes no sense.
Well, it's kind of funny too, like, the old conservative saying, like, guns don't kill people. I do. It's like Facebook doesn't cause genocide, like people cause genocide.
Yeah.
It's just funny how it's being framed like that. Like Facebook is, like personified and, walking around and gathering up ethnic minorities and putting them in a gas chamber. Like, no, of course not. It's people who do that.
Right. And another thing that Haugen said in the 60 Minutes interview, which I think if you just hear it, it sort of passes without raising any suspicion. But when you read it on the page, it really jumps out as something more, at least to me. And she said, quote, at some point in 2021, I realized I'm going to have to do this in a systematic way. And I have to get enough so that no one can question that this is real. So that part at the end, so that no one can question that this is real, really jumped out to me once I read it, sort of as a way of shoring up in front of a huge audience that even though this is a psyop, you could argue she's saying it's real. She's been groomed as this trustworthy person, this sort of normie who came from the Facebook panopticon and has this inside information, but she's level-headed and she's saying this is real and you can't question that.
Yeah.
And I think that's a real tell right there. And also very
frightening.
Yeah, very frightening in terms of what that bodes for the future. Um, but moving on from there, let's get into Whistleblower Aid, which is the organization that's been representing and grooming her. Can you talk a bit about them and the figures behind Whistleblower
Yeah,
Aid?
yeah, yeah. So I mean, this is going to be the long part, right? Because this is like the crux of my article. There's really four people uh, who I talk about in my article. They're really the only ones important here. Um, so if you're listening, try to just keep these names separated and do your best to kind of work through this with me. So first person I talk about is John Ty, because John Ty was the person who Frances Haugen contacted asking for legal representation. So John Ty was a State Department employee, and as I talk a lot about in my article, because one really interesting thing about this, and this is ironic, is that Hillary Clinton's State Department's Internet Freedom campaign kind of set the groundwork, the background for a lot of this story specifically. The people who are involved got their start on those programs, like, or it rose to prominence at least, working on those programs, which is ironic because her Internet Freedom campaign, which is a campaign to use internet freedom issues as a cudgel against foreign governments that the United States already wants to overthrow, in the name of open and free internet. A lot of those people are now working alongside Haugen to censor the internet. So it's very ironic in that way. And Hillary Clinton, of course, has been one of the chief advocates of censorship in the U.S. media and in politics. So that's, I think that's like an important theme that I kind of identify in my story is how these people want to like overthrow Iran or China because of the firewall. And they're basically saying we need to put up our own firewalls. So John Ty was at the State Department under Hillary Clinton, under a guy by the name of Mark Posner, who recruited him there. So they were both working on internet freedom stuff and human rights. Mark Posner, and this guy's not super important for the story, so our viewers can forget about this in 2 minutes, but I want to point out that now he's a prominent human rights lawyer who, while he was at State, he went to Israel to counsel like 12 generals. I forget how many generals. It's a good number.
Seven, I believe.
7 generals who had done war crimes and basically helped them avoid any kind of prosecution. So that's the guy that recruited John Ty to the State Department. John Ty at the State Department, it was his job to go around the world, globetrot on behalf of the U.S. government, promoting internet freedom and attacking countries that fail on that record in the United States view. So eventually what happened is that Edward Snowden blew the whistle on NSA mass surveillance. And one of the things that Edward Snowden exposed was a program. It was an executive order from the Reagan era, which allows the NSA to collect data on Americans that are abroad. So this is actually how. Well, we'll get into that in a second, but this program's called 12333. And even the Washington Post has said that Snowden revealed how 12333 was the quote wellspring of NSA's collection of data on Americans. So Edward Snowden blows the whistle. John Ty's at State. Now State has to deal with all the repercussions of the Snowden disclosures. For example, we were spying on Angela Merkel, right? So this is a big deal for the State Department as the diplomacy arm of the U.S. government. So John Ty starts getting briefings from the NSA about how to deal with things, what's going on, what's been revealed. And in the course of those briefings, he learned about 12333 and decides that he's also going to blow the whistle. uh, on that program. But he's not going to do it like Snowden. And this is something which his lawyer at the time, Mark Zaid, and this is a name people should keep in their head. John Ty's lawyer, Mark Zaid, at the time was rabidly attacking Edward Snowden in the press and holding up his client, John Ty, as the anti-Snowden, as somebody who was going to go through the official channels, not disclose any classified information, and do everything, quote, navigate the lawful reporting process.
Which, let me just say, if you just look at that on its face, that is not whistleblowing in any meaningful sense. That
Well, the public
is,
never sees what these
right,
people have.
right.
Yeah. So, and you know, at the same time, the media is calling John Ty the U.S. government's ideal whistleblower. You know, calling him a hero, all kinds of things. You know, so he was the first fake whistleblower, at least that I talk about in my article. There's another article I have that's about a different fake Facebook whistleblower from Cambridge Analytica, and people are really interested in that. They can find that on the Gray Zone. But so John Ty leaves the State Department after blowing the whistle. And by the way, 12333 has not been reformed. And so as much as his lawyer, Mark Zaid, likes to say this is the way to do it if you want change, it made no change. It made no change. And it was expanded by Obama in the days before he left office. 12333 was. And eventually that was the program that was used to spy on Michael Flynn. So that's just kind of an interesting data point.
And when you say expanded, it was expanded so that the NSA could share with other intelligence agencies.
That's right. Without a court order, without a warrant, without any kind of congressional approval or nothing like that. They can just fucking spy and send it over. So yeah, it was made more powerful and more dangerous to civil liberties. So John Ty leaves the State Department and takes a job with an organization called Avaz. Some of your viewers might be familiar with them. I guess they're really popular. I had never heard of them. I went on Twitter. I found that they were following me, but I didn't even realize, which is kind of creepy. But they're like this like online regime change activist group, right? Like, so they do like petitions like, you know, stop the chicken slaughter, right? And they get 60,000 signatures to, you know, bring to Tyson Chicken. I don't know, you know. And then they do like, we need a no-fly zone in Libya, you know, and they get 200,000 signatures. They bring that to the European Parliament, whatever. I'm just giving examples. I don't know if these are things they actually did with the European Parliament, but they were main advocates of the no-fly zone in Libya, which, you know, people, it barely needs repeating at this point because, you know, we've done a good job of kind of mainstreaming this information, but Libya is a failed state today because of the no-fly zone, the NATO-backed no-fly zone, which gave air cover for jihadist militias to overrun the country, pull the Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi out of his convoy and rape him to death with a bayonet. And now there's open air slave markets where Black Africans are sold. And there's 3 governments in different areas that are all fighting with each other. It's a mess. It used to have the highest standard of living in all of Africa.
Yeah, I would just point people to Richard Medhurst's channel on Rockfin. He just did a really good segment about Libya 10 years later. So check that out if you want more information on that.
Yeah, Richard does a great job. I haven't seen that. I actually want to go see that now. So I'll do that. Thanks for that.
Yeah.
So Avaz was, you know, one of the key drivers of the no-fly zone campaign. And then when Syria started getting hot, they wanted to do the same thing. And this is when John Ty, previously of the State Department, you know, was working there. And so they started pushing the no-fly zone in Syria. And he actually had to personally give his response to the criticism that they were getting because people saw how awful it was for Libya. So, you know, he responded saying, you know, thousands of people will die if we do nothing, you know. the basic humanitarian interventionist line. So eventually he leaves Avaz, and I should point out that Avaz kind of spawned an offshoot organization called Purpose, and Purpose is this is exposed by Max Blumenthal a few years ago. Purpose was like the parent company, kind of, and I might be getting minor details wrong here, but they were Purpose was above the Syria campaign, which manages the PR operations of the White Helmets. So this is like very much a regime change group, and they look innocuous online. And one thing that's interesting is that before Frances Haugen's identity was revealed, when we just had the Wall Street Journal articles, Avaz was organizing protests outside Capitol Hill against Facebook because of these files, because of these reports. So while John Tai is no longer there, that kind of suggests to me that there may be some coordination between whistleblower aid and Avaz to this day. I can't prove it, but I think that Facebook protest on what was then an obscure issue, nobody, you need a Wall Street Journal subscription to read the journal. So just the reach was not very high. But the Facebook whistleblower, who was then anonymous, wasn't a trending topic. So he leaves Avaz after about a year and teams up with his former lawyer, Mark Zaid, the guy who helped him, quote, navigate the lawful reporting process. Mark Zaid is, without a doubt, the most famous whistleblower attorney in the United States, and potentially one of the most famous national security attorneys. He's a big deal. And he's, like I said, he's attacked Edward Snowden while he was representing John Tai. But if you go to his Twitter account, and I did, and I also wouldn't recommend it. But if you go there, you're going to find that he's attacked just about every important whistleblower, everyone who's ever raised the consciousness of the American people and taught them about the illegal operations that their government is conducting on them and people abroad. He's attacked them. Julian Assange, he said, is not a journalist. Edward Snowden, he said, is not a whistleblower. Reality Winner, he said, is not a whistleblower. Now, I should stipulate there that I think that what Reality Winner exposed was wildly spun by the media to be something which it wasn't actually.
Yeah, by James Risen in particular.
Yeah. However, I do want to say that I have a good deal of sympathy for her. I feel very sorry for her. I think she was doing the right thing. She thought she was doing the right thing. And you know what? She's still on house arrest. So she's still within the Bureau of Prisons custody. I just saw that like yesterday. So, this is somebody who I think it's inappropriate to attack in the Washington Post. And he did that. There's also accusations from, well, let's say prominent whistleblower community people, and also by the FBI, that Mark Zaid, the co-founder of Whistleblower Aid, ratted out his client to Langley, Jeffrey Sterling. And this is supposedly how it was learned at trial that Jeffrey Epstein was the source of, I think it was Risen's leak too, right? Or Risen's report, I forget. But during his trial, there was an FBI agent by the name of Ashley Hunt who testified that Mark Zaid and his legal partner at the time, who's not an important person in this article, Roy Krieger, contacted them and told them that they had a client who was going to go to the media about a nuclear topic that's classified, and that partner was Jeffrey Sterling. So WikiLeaks has said that they've talked to people close to Sterling who have said that this is true. John Kiriakou, the man who blew the whistle on the CIA torture, he's called Mark Zaid a rat. Thomas Drake has also raised issues. So you have a lot of people that are not just the FBI, but prominent whistleblowers who have said this is true. Mark Zaid has denied it. So what I did was I contacted Jeffrey Sterling myself, and I asked him if he could clear this up, and because he hasn't commented on this before, and unfortunately he was not able to. He was either unwilling or unable to do that. He didn't want to comment.
Yeah, you quote his response in your piece, quote, "With no intention of stating an opinion one way or another, I will not comment on Mr. Zaid or his representation," unquote.
Yeah, and I don't want to speculate too much, but I think that if he was quite pleased with the representation he got from Mark Zaid, I don't see a reason why he wouldn't tell me that, right? I can only speculate as to why he wouldn't tell me anything. So I'll leave that at that. But Mark Zaid he's a guy who is very much he may at times have had adversarial relationships with the intelligence community, working on whistleblower cases, etc. But he's still somebody who thinks that the intelligence community is doing the right thing. It's a service for the American people. He is very much against the leak of classified information. 3 times on the Whistleblower Aid's website, it says that they're not WikiLeaks, or somehow in some other way admonishes WikiLeaks. They say, oh, John Ty, instead of going to the media or WikiLeaks, he blew the whistle through the proper channel. They say that on the website. Of course, they don't tell you that it amounted to nothing, that EO 12333 was never reformed.
Right. But, and that before he made public statements, he cleared them with the NSA and one other intelligence agency. I'm forgetting which one at the moment. State Department. Yeah.
And what's funny, because John Ty went public with a op-ed in the Washington Post, and he cleared it with both state and NSA, who made no changes. So I mean, how much is this really blowing the whistle? How do you blow the whistle if when you blow the whistle they're like, oh yeah, go ahead, blow the whistle? That's not blowing the whistle. So and then it's funny too, because every time he'd give an interview with the media at the time, this is back in 2014, but he'd have this script that he'd read from, and he's like, I will not be disclosing any classified information. He'd have a witness on the line too. He wouldn't do it without a witness, like another former state person or whatever. And if you hear anything that sounds like I'm talking about classified information, I want to tell you that you misheard me. So it was this really weird script. I can just imagine me as a reporter getting on the phone to the source and him telling me that, I'd be like, what the fuck is wrong with this guy? So
basically assume that it is classified information that's being disclosed.
What do you mean?
Well, him issuing that caveat sounds to me like a way to dispel the fact that he is or may be talking about classified information. Although, as you said, nothing he's said or done has amounted to really anything. So
I think that he probably didn't disclose classified information just because I mean, he's a fucking loser, right? He's not a hero. He's not somebody who took risks to bring the truth to the American people. He had a problem with something that was happening that Snowden already exposed and made a name for himself lawfully without any risk of going to prison. And so just to go back to Mark Zaid, just to bring home, and we have a section that's kind of about this, and I didn't include this one tweet in my article, but there was this, I don't know if people are familiar with Muckrock. It's like a FOIA website, and they publish FOIA responses. And one thing that they put out on Twitter one time was that at Disney World and Disneyland, they used to give free entry to FBI. And Mark Zaid said, "Oh, I would have joined FBI if I knew that were true." He's got like a really weird infatuation with Disney.
Yeah, you have this section in your piece. The subheader is all the Disney one needs and wants to be, which
Yeah,
is something, it's word for word something that Zaid tweeted
that's such a
back in
weird tweet, man.
2018. Yeah, and you can talk about this too if you want, but he, in responding to, it looks like another attorney regarding getting clearances, he said that I've gotten clearances for guys who had child porn issues. He tweeted this out
Yeah,
on February 10, 2018. And then I noticed that it was that same evening at 9:28 when he tweeted out, "One does not need kids to be all the Disney one needs and wants to be." And then the tweet includes 6 photos of him at Disney World, I presume,
yeah,
posing with Mickey,
Minnie Mouse,
Minnie,
yeah.
Goofy, Snow White, and I don't know who's taking the pictures, but
Probably an employee. I don't think he brought anyone.
yeah. So, but the real concerning thing there is that he openly admits that he's gotten clearances. I don't know if it's true or not, but for guys who had child porn issues. And that's, I don't know what that means exactly, but that's something that should raise a huge red flag, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he takes a firm moral stance against leaking classified information or talking to the media, but child porn issues, that's not problematic for him. And there's also a YouTube channel, and I don't want to say it's his, but it certainly looks like it belongs to him. It's called Mark S. Zaid Esquire, and it uploads old interviews. Actually, like he had some interviews on RT back in the day, so
Huh.
it uploaded old videos of him. But I found an archived version of this page, which shows that its liked videos are really disturbing. Things like videos titled "Selena Gomez from Girl to Woman," top 10 prettiest Disney girls, really disturbing things. And at first my thought was like, my first thought when I found this was like, okay, maybe he has like a daughter or something, so I started looking into whether he had any family, and that's when I found that Disney tweet where he says, "One does not need kids to be all the Disney one wants to be," with all those creepy pictures, man. I mean, he looks like a creep in those pictures.
Yeah, he does.
So that was how I found that tweet. I mean, it was just like, I'm just like, what the fuck am I looking at? Like, this cannot be real. And why would you put that out? I mean, he must feel pretty safe from investigation to put those kinds of things out.
Yeah, and
You
I
know,
just think it's interesting too that he tweeted about all the Disney one needs and wants to be
the same day. I didn't realize
yeah,
that.
on the same evening. And
Yeah, I didn't
then
realize that.
it was less than 2 hours later when he tweeted, "I've gotten clearances for guys who had child porn issues," which these read like somebody who might be under the influence of something, like, you
Yeah.
go on Twitter and your inhibitions are down.
Yeah. I didn't
But
realize that they were the same night. That's creepy.
yeah, it is. Like he was on some sort of tear. But yeah, the main takeaway from that is that, like you said, this is somebody who purports to be by the book and claims that whistleblowers have to go through the proper channels the proper legal channels to essentially blow the whistle. And he's very publicly putting out statements like this, which are disturbing to say the least, which don't comport with the legal representative image he tries to portray.
Yeah, it's not very professional, is it?
No.
So,
and if you look at just one more thing, I don't want to spend too much time on these tweets, but if you look at the ratio of likes to comments on the one with the pictures at Disney World, it has 141 likes, but 736 comments. And if you look at the one that says I've gotten clearances for guys who had child porn issues, it has 506 likes and 2,600 comments. So
who are the 500 people that like that? That's what
I didn't get a chance to look at that, but or any of the comments, but I thought that was a bit telling there too.
Yeah. But I think just to underscore his relationship to the intelligence community, he doesn't just represent intelligence community whistleblowers. He's also right now working on cases of so-called Habana syndrome, which kind of brings us to the third lawyer of Frances Haugen. It's a Gray Zone mug.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, very nice. I'm jealous.
Yeah.
I gotta get me one. Yeah. So again, John Ty representing Haugen, giving media interviews, etc. Mark Zaid doing the same, representing her, giving interviews. Third guy, Andrew Bakaj, representing her and giving media interviews. And he is also a former CIA agent, which, I'm always kind of disappointed when I'm doing some reporting and I find out that somebody used to be with the CIA, because then it's like, okay, so I have nothing I'm going to be able to say about them, because it's all fucking, locked up in a case somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
That I'll never have access to. So unfortunately, I can't say too much about him. I know that he's working on Habana syndrome cases as well. I know that he was a prosecutor as well at the Department of Defense, and I know that he was a CIA agent. And I know from his Twitter account that he's also very much against WikiLeaks. Like Mark Zaid, he said that Snowden shouldn't be pardoned. Julian Assange, it's good that he's been brought to justice, these kinds of things. But there's like forget John Ty and Mark Zaid and all their ties. There's a direct connection between Frances Haugen and the CIA right there through Andrew Bakaj. Okay. And then the last person I talk about in my article, maybe it was Bakaj. Yeah, I think so. But the last person that we haven't talked about at Whistleblower Aid is not an attorney, not representing Haugen, and actually joined the organization around the same time that Frances Haugen became a client of theirs back in the spring. And this is Libby Liu. She's the president, she's the CEO, not the president, of Whistleblower Aid. And she may not be CIA, but she's about as close as you can come, right? Without actually being a CIA agent. Because for 16 years, Libby Liu worked at Radio Free Asia many of those years as the president and CEO of Radio Free Asia. Radio Free Asia is of course a U.S. propaganda outlet that was started by the CIA. So Libby Liu, and their main thing is that they try to agitate through reporting against the Chinese government, to stir up regime change. So that's Radio Free Asia's big thing, because China's the big bad in the region. But while at Radio Free Asia, she's actually credited with founding the Open Technology Fund, where she later went and served as president. Now, the Open Technology Fund, this is kind of a controversial topic on in left circles. And I see even Edward Snowden the other day was tweeting about how there was some kind of encryption app or something that was created by the CIA. And he said something like, "In the trash it goes." At the same time, he's been a heavy promoter of both Tor and Signal, which have been financially supported heavily through the Open Technology Fund. Basically, what the Open Technology Fund does is it funnels money into like tech startups, encryption kind of things that can help foreign regime change activists overthrow their governments. So that's what they do, and Libby Lou started that. And there was some, controversy while she was there. And of course, I want to point out that, they sent a lot of money to Hong Kong in 2019, to the Hong Kong rioters. So while she was there, she got fired. Steve Bannon was pushing against her. I don't even know what the issue was. It was some stupid thing. So she left OTF and Radio Free Asia, which is the parent of OTF, and she eventually came and joined Whistleblower Aid. So all of these people, Mark Zaid, John Tai from State, and Avaz, Andrew Bakaj, and Libby Lou, all of them have worked to destabilize U.S. government official enemies. So it's not surprising at all that Frances Haugen is now taking that line. And it's all the more effective because it's being coupled with this protect the children message.
Right. Which I know you just mentioned Edward Snowden and his questionable backing of Tor and Signal, for example. But in an interview with Joe Rogan, and he's probably said it elsewhere too, he makes a good point that when you attach protecting children to any sort of legislation or operation, if you will. Yeah, Snowden did.
Yeah.
That it's sort of the perfect cover, because who's going to be against protecting children, right? So that becomes, even though that's not meant to be the focus, it puts the focus on that, and therefore, other nefarious measures can get rammed through under the guise of protecting children. And just one more thing to that point, I wanted to read this paragraph from your piece because I didn't know this, and I think I'm not sure how many viewers might know this, but it's important to know. You write, in addition to pumping millions of dollars into projects like Tor and Signal, the Open Technology Fund boasts that, quote, more than 2/3 of all mobile users globally have technology incubated by OTF on their device, unquote. So that is frightening, disturbing.
And that's from OTF themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you linked to that in your piece, which of course we'll link to in the show notes. So yeah, you pretty concretely prove, I would say, that this Frances Haugen campaign is an intelligence campaign. And
your words, not mine. I have to be careful. It's scary when you're reporting on lawyers, right? And you know that, like, okay, if I fuck up, these people will ruin me.
Yeah. So I can't say that definitely, but I will say that the evidence you present in your piece strongly points to that. But I wanted to get perhaps into more speculative territory for a bit. Can
I say something really quick?
Sure.
I think through Whistleblower Aid, we have pretty good examples of how to not be a whistleblower, and I have a lot of respect for Edward Snowden. But last night I saw on Twitter, it's actually from October 22. Spencer Ackerman and Laura Poitras unite to publish a never-before-seen document leaked by Edward Snowden detailing paranoid ways U.S. intelligence understood legal and political challenges to extrajudicial drone killings on Substack. Well, Edward Snowden blew the whistle 8 years ago, and now we're getting Snowden disclosures on Substack. I don't think that's the way that it should be done either. I think that the model for how this should be done is WikiLeaks and Julian Assange, who he's got an appeal hearing coming up in the next few days. So I just want to use this opportunity to highlight that if you do it right, if you do it in a way that can effectuate change, if you do it in a way that the public can actually see it, unlike with the Snowden disclosures, where most of it's still unreported, unreleased, and 8 years later, we're still getting information now on Substack. It's like been privatized, the Snowden disclosures, instead of being open to the public. If you do it like Julian Assange, you don't get the treatment that Frances Haugen has been getting. You get sent to Belmarsh. So I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to advocate for Julian.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe that's the 27th that the next hearing is. But I agree. Well, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I have some skepticism regarding Edward Snowden. I think what he did back in 2013 is something. It's not. I think I'm fully on board and I support his disclosures then, his leaks then. But since then, it seems like he's taken a more milquetoast stance on whistleblowing, and he said some things that have caused me to raise my eyebrows, that don't really comport with where he at least initially presented himself to be coming from. So if you watch his interviews with Joe Rogan, I don't know if it's in both of them or if it's in just one, but he reiterates that, most people who work for the CIA and intelligence aren't bad people. They aren't bad people. They aren't bad people.
Yeah.
And, that may just be the pragmatic side of him, or trying to be fair, or nonpartisan or what have you. But, like you just said, this undisclosed information that he's putting out behind, I don't know if it's behind a paywall on Substack or not, but I'm
not sure either. It's just 8 years, man. Let's get that information out.
Right.
I want to start like a hashtag release the leaks campaign, because it's ridiculous at this point.
Yeah. And and then also you have the issue with the Snowden leaks that the Guardian let the servers be destroyed. I believe it was the servers or the drives where they let those be destroyed by UK intelligence, I think it was. So, not that Snowden had anything to do with that, but there are, I think, some valid questions to be asked about about Snowden and the narrative behind him. I'm not saying that, I'm not insinuating anything in particular, but
and he's taken the same line as Hillary Clinton's State Department, right? I remember when Juan Guaido was he had like 60 military people and he was trying to overthrow the government in Venezuela. Snowden was on Twitter saying, "Oh, they're shutting down the internet in Venezuela. How can they, everybody needs internet access." And it's like, well, look, they're in the middle of an insurrection right now. There's more important things sometimes. And again, that's basically the line that the State Department takes, is like, we need internet so that the insurrectionists in Hong Kong or Iran or Venezuela can coordinate their attacks on the public.
Right.
And so Snowden's kind of pushed that, and I think that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you, with regard to Facebook, what are your thoughts on where they stand with Frances Haugen and the Facebook files, however you want to brand it? Do you
Yeah.
think that they are independent of this, or do you think that they're working in concert with this? What are your, I'm asking you to speculate, obviously, but what are
Yeah.
your intuitions telling you? What is your research telling you?
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's meeting with Facebook, right?
Mhm.
She so I don't know if you know um it's certainly possible they're working together. I don't want to speculate on that too much. But I think that there's a degree of truth in what she says, that Facebook doesn't really want to censor because they want more engagement, right? They want more engagement. That means more money. The thing is that I think if this is coordinated, it's definitely with the U.S. government, um, because the U.S. government knows that they cannot directly censor us. There's a little thing called the First Amendment. It's much easier for them to strong arm a company to do it for them. This is why I say Facebook should be nationalized. I know people don't trust the US government to have that information, but guess what? Facebook has a law enforcement portal anyways. Cops can go into the back of Facebook and get all the stuff they need already. What nationalizing Facebook would do would give us First Amendment protection on the platform. It means the government cannot delete anything. So at this point, it's much easier for them to pressure, put Facebook under their thumb to censor us for them. So I think that's a really important point, is that, and that's what they want, and to censor us and censor other governments or alleged governments, because so often FireEye, which is a private company that was started with funding from InQtel, the CIA's funding arm. They work with Facebook. They work and they publish these. They identify they say we have 30 accounts here that are secretly run by the Venezuelan government. We're not going to tell anyone how we know that, but we know that. And then Facebook bans those accounts or whatever. And then I've seen FireEye and Facebook, all these reports mentioned by the State Department many times. So there's a circle here that's working together to silence U.S. government critics, and I'm of the view that I don't think the whole botting thing is necessarily good, but I'm of the view that if another government wants to go on social media and criticize the United States, they should have that right. It's a free speech thing, and obviously the U.S. government doesn't want that. So the degree to which Haugen and Facebook are working together, I don't know. And I don't envision a situation where they said, here's a flash drive of 60,000 pages of documents, go bring it to the Wall Street Journal. Their stocks fell, but the U.S. government or people at Whistleblower Aid, because it's not clear when exactly she started working with Whistleblower Aid, whether it was after or before she left Facebook. I understand why they would have this motivation to get this information out and advance their censorship campaign.
Yeah, and the reason I bring this up is because I think there are two ways to look at Facebook's involvement here, or what Facebook is exactly. There's a way to look at it as in Facebook is this independent social media entity, this behemoth that the government externally is trying to take over and
Yeah.
control and censor as much as it can. And then there's also, I think, a very plausible scenario wherein Facebook is so tied to the national security state
Yeah.
that it is essentially an arm of the national security state
Yeah.
willingly.
Yeah.
And that's where my questions come in with regard to how complicit Facebook is in all of this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
if you look at the money that was lost on the stock market, it's really peanuts for
Yeah.
a company like Facebook. And then, there were a lot of shady things that happened around the same time, not just with Frances Haugen, but with Facebook shutting down, with
Yeah.
Instagram shutting down,
And
WhatsApp shutting down.
now they're rebranding.
Yeah. And I saw, it was either yesterday or the day before, that they're trying to figure out how to crack down on people who have multiple accounts. They're putting that out as a problem, so
Mhm.
that, which a lot of people do. A lot of people have an account where they share social stuff, and a lot of people have an account for other reasons, maybe
Mhm.
to talk politics or whatever. So, I don't know what the case definitely is, but I'm leaning more toward that Facebook is essentially the national security state. It's embedded with them. It's not independent of them
Yeah.
and has a relationship with them. It's in there. And if we go back to the origins of Facebook, we find it's essentially a DARPA project,
Yeah.
a military project that's, like most social media, rolled out so that we can profile ourselves for
Yeah.
the surveillance state. So, yeah, I just wanted to get your perspective on that.
No,
And
that's, I
again,
mean, those are really fair questions. You make some very solid arguments, and I don't know the answer either. It could be both, right?
right,
A bit of both. And like I said, Facebook working with FireEye, started by the CIA, and then going the State Department using that. It's an incestuous cycle, right? A circle of coordination. So I think that there are strong arguments to be made, which you did. So I mean, those are good points, and yeah, they're valid. And so it's hard to say what Facebook and Haugen's coordination could look like, because we don't have evidence, and as you opened up, this is speculation. But now that I hear your perspective, I do see where you're coming from.
yeah. So something to consider. Not you per se, but all of us.
All of us, yeah.
Yeah. And so as we wrap here, I just wanted to point to one more comment that Haugen made during her testimony before Congress. And I'll read from what you wrote here. She commented that, quote, "What we saw in Myanmar and are now seeing in Ethiopia are only the opening chapters of a story so terrifying, no one wants to read the end of it." And what I certainly I'm reading into it, but I think that when she speaks of a story so terrifying, no one wants to read the end of it, what she's alluding to, whether consciously or not, is the surveillance panopticon that's being built every day, as
Yeah.
we see, with regard to journalists, with regard to whistleblowers, with regard to just people who make political commentary on Twitter or on
Yeah.
Facebook, and who don't go along with the official narrative. So, all of which is to say, I think there are a lot of tells in what she says, the language she uses in her interview with 60 Minutes, in her congressional testimony, and
Yeah.
lots of things to be dug into here. But I think your piece does a really good job in digging into who's not just her, but who's behind her and who's pushing
Mhm.
her, and and it really, I think, solidifies the point you make, or the thesis of your piece, which is that she is essentially a pawn in a very far-reaching game that goes beyond just monitoring Facebook for toxic content.
Right, right. Yeah, and whistleblower aid, I think it's Mark Zaid and John Ty, in an interview just openly admitted that, they give their clients media training and training on how to talk to Congress and all that kind of stuff. So it's kind of uncommon for lawyers to do that with their clients, outside of like saying like, here's how you avoid like incriminating yourself.
Yeah.
So yeah, really, really scary things, especially with I worry for future whistleblowers that may go to whistleblower aid. Go to WikiLeaks.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's why another reason your piece is important, is because it provides a warning for people who may be thinking of blowing the whistle and going to this organization, this outfit.
Yeah.
You are very likely to get burned, as their track record shows, or groomed.
Yeah, depending on whose agenda you're advancing, the public or the government's.
Right. So yeah, overall, lots of important and urgent implications for not just press freedom, but freedom of expression across the board, freedom to dissent. So thank you for writing this piece, and thank you for coming on.
Thanks for helping me share it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on and breaking it down, because I think, as we move into the future, we're going to see more and more of the surveillance panopticon, as I say, being built. And I think operations like this being used to solidify, that construct, that total surveillance, total information awareness.
Yeah.
So yeah, we really need to be vigilant, and your piece certainly helps us do that. So so thank you again.
Yeah, thank you.
So Alex Rubinstein, you can find his work at realalexruby.substack.com. He is the co-host of Pro Democracy Pod on Rockfin. Definitely check that out. Lots of good content there. Very up to date, very timely content. And you can check this piece out at Alex's Substack or at the Gray Zone. We'll link to both in the show notes. And
go to the Gray Zone, because I only have like the first section on my Substack.
Okay.
So I encourage you to check it out on the Gray Zone.
Yeah, I noticed that I had to link over to the Gray Zone.
That was just for my email list, to send it out.
Yeah. And you can follow Alex on Twitter at real Alex Ruby, correct?
RUBI, yep.
RUBI, yep. So Alex, thank you again, and look forward to having you back on.
Keep doing great work, man. I look forward to seeing more from you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, take care.